Hello, ladies, and welcome to the Liberated Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Christiano Green, and I am a mindset coach for women, and I help women move past rejection and self-doubt. So this week on the podcast, we have a special guest, my sister, Kylie. Now, I told you, ladies, that I wanted to have on the podcast different guests, and I thought, when I was thinking about my very first guest, I thought, why not keep it close to home? And I invited my sister on here because she has had a very interesting career, to say the least. Kylie is a business development manager for the hospitality industry, right? And for people in that kind of an industry, we know at that level is usually kind of male dominated. So I wanted to get her on here because she's had to, face a lot of different adversities in her career and in life. And I thought it'd be great to get on here and get to know more about her story for me personally, because, I don't know all of it. So I'm excited to hear about it today, but I thought it's going to be also beneficial to you. So welcome, Kylie. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more to the ladies?
Hi, ladies. So my name is Kylie, and I am a business development manager, and I work in the hospitality industry. I've been in the industry my entire life, so it's been quite an interesting journey in terms of how I've progressed and the amount of different kind of experiences and people that I've met throughout my career. But yeah, so I guess it's kind of an interesting one to share, because I guess so many of you can obviously, relate in terms of how you've probably been treated in the past, and obviously, how you kind of feel in terms of your self-confidence and your own kind of journeys that you've probably been on as well. So yeah, I just thought I'd join in on the podcast today and kind of share my story.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to hearing about it, Kylie. So let's kind of jump in. You said, obviously you've worked your way up through this kind of career. Tell me, how it all started, and, when you were back then, did you envision where you'd be today? So let's just talk a bit about that journey.
Okay, sure. So it was kind of, I was very much open-minded to where I was going to develop to in my career, because I was always one of those people, and I mean, you can probably understand where I'm coming from with this, with having parents that were very much like, everything was all about your self journey. We were treated as individuals, and it was all about what we were going to experience in life and what we were going to open ourselves up to. So when I was younger, I always thought that I'd become a chef. I was quite interested in cooking when I was in high school. And it wasn't until my early 20s where I kind of decided that I was one of those people who, was very much a people person. And I didn't feel like working in the kitchen would allow me to engage as much as what I like to in terms of, being around people. So I always knew that I was one to kind of be out on the floor and not cooking in the kitchen.
You're not a back of house girl, are you?
Not a house girl at all. I needed to be out there in terms of serving people, because it's a passion I absolutely love, in terms of making people's experiences so amazing. So I did my first shift out on the floor. I worked at a restaurant, and it was a seafood restaurant at the time. And yeah, I kind of just thought, I'm just going to go with this for now, because I've been just decided to start a diploma in the hospitality industry. So I thought, why not go with this diploma at this point, because I've been enjoying working in the front of house. And then I got a job working in a bar, in a nightclub. And at the time, it was just a little bit of fun. I never really thought that my career was actually going to kind of take off from there, into which it did. So working in the nightclubs, I started picking up glasses, and I was just kind of clearing.
Starting right at the bottom, right?
Starting right at the bottom, yeah, exactly. But still being quite humble about it, and actually kind of with that drive, in working hard at what I do. And I think that was obviously a quality that, my bosses saw in me at the time, who then wanted to give me the opportunity to kind of step my way up into management. So I kind of did that, and then.
How long do you reckon that would have taken you to start at the bottom, do all of that stuff before someone gave you a little opportunity?
It took about 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, until obviously opportunity, and also too, once you're working in jobs, you're kind of waiting for roles to come available as well at the same time.
Sometimes it takes a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, one of the most amazing parts about it was that someone obviously gave the opportunity to me, It wasn't one that I was thinking that I was initially going to work towards, but it just kind of fell into my lap. And me being an opportunist, took on that, took on that role and took on that challenge. Yeah, and so I kind of stepped my way up. I kind of worked for a couple of years in that venue, and then when I moved to Sydney, my directors of that company wanted me to go and run one of their venues out west and step up into that general manager role, because I'd kind of dedicated my time to them over the last 4 years. I've done a great job. I'd stepped in whenever it was needed, and I showed those kind of like, I guess those good qualities of being quite loyal, determined, driven, and quite enthusiastic. So I think, that's kind of where it led me, was that kind of that behavioral style of having that drive. And then my life took me overseas because it was something that I wanted to do for so long. So I went traveling. And then I based myself in London because I was quite open to staying in London because I had a passport. And I always thought, again, with that open mind, I'll just go along with the journey and see where it takes me and what the experiences were. And I just ended up settling in London, working in gastropubs.
As a general manager.
As a general manager, yeah.
And
exactly.
tell the people who may not know, what is the general manager of an establishment?
So a general manager is, you run a venue essentially, and you're in charge of the license of that venue, and you obviously are there to manage and operate the business and make sure it's as successful as it can be. So with that, obviously there's a lot of different crazy experiences, working in an industry where it's kind of predominantly lots of men. Also too, in terms of customers as well, working in bars, pubs, nightclubs, people are alcohol fueled. So, you come across so many different situations that put you under pressure, which challenge you, stretch you.
Which is why people would have often said that maybe it was a more male-dominated industry in the past, because they're like, there's that whole thing of, it's not for girls, it's not for little girls, but, exactly. You're not a little girl, right?
No, exactly. And I think it's just one of those things where if you've got the courage to kind of, jump through those hoops, then you'll get there, and people will see that, and people will stand down quite a lot more when you stand your own ground. So it's kind of what I had to do, was to kind of fight my way through the industry, because then I saw that my career had taken me to that point. I developed higher into, more managerial roles, to the point where I was like, right, there's definitely a career for me in this. And a lot of people don't realize is that there are actual careers in the hospitality industry. A lot of people see it as just a service industry, but there's a lot more to it.
That people do for a few years while they're doing something. Yeah, I'm studying,
exactly. Yeah, like something like part-time or casual, people don't see it as a career until you're actually in it and you invest in yourself and you form a passion for it. And that's kind of what I did. So I managed to kind of navigate myself around London and in terms of the industry as well, to kind of get to know what it was about over there. And that's where my career really blossomed, to be quite honest with you. And that's where I kind of, again, progressed myself up through the ranks from a general manager into a business development manager, after taking on a few other sites in London and kind of, broadening my, my knowledge and my skills in the industry, and also to my portfolio in terms of the types of businesses that I had been running as well.
Yeah. And so then, if from your, I guess, guesstimation, or maybe some statistics, but how would you say the ratio is for men to women on a percentage wise? Like from your experience, like, is it like 80% men? Is it higher? Is it lower? What would you suggest?
I would definitely say that I think in terms of managers in the industry,
like say general managers and then above,
general managers above, even assistant managers as well, you're probably looking at 30% women, 70% male kind of oriented. So
got it.
Yeah.
And then of course, some of the people that step into kind of those roles, certain types of men, I would say sometimes, right? So tell me, like, what are some of the traits of some of the men that you would say you've worked with in the past that have maybe been, a struggle where, like, you could have easily, if you didn't have some of the confidence, you might have said, this is not for me, I can't do this anymore, because you're not being treated, equally or fairly, or people are treating you, like I said, as a little girl.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I think obviously our generation is changing a lot now, moving up into the ranks when you look at people and cultures within a lot of businesses. But I think that's only just something that's kind of starting to happen in like the modern world. But I think over the last like 5 to 10 years, as I've been kind of in the industry, I think it's a very ego-led industry. So a lot of, because it's so male like dominated, there's a lot of egos present. So you have to really try to push yourself through that in terms of like the people that you face, and in terms of like, I guess, your perceptions, your judgments on certain situations, and what you allow to limit you and what you don't. If that makes sense. You get a lot of men that will try to trip you up, who will try to make you feel a lot more weaker than what you are, because in terms of from a power point of view, because it's a way of them showing that they are, you know, better than you, essentially. So sometimes it's a fight, and it's a power battle in terms of facing up to some of those egos, because essentially, sometimes men don't always they're not in full awareness of what their certain behaviors are in terms of their emotional intelligence. So it's also to trying to have a good understanding of, you know, of people, because we are quite complex in the way that we are in terms of how we carry ourselves.
Okay, then. And so then talk, maybe if you do you have any examples of like any experiences that you might have had with some of these men who have tried to do the power struggle? Because I know from talking to you in the past, you know, you haven't always had great people supporting you. You know, then you know, I think there's been some, you know, bullying or things like that. So do you have an example that maybe you could share to the ladies of like, to the extent of what can happen in this kind of industry?
I think it was there was an experience that I had just before actually I stepped up into my business development manager role, and it was actually with a BDM at the time, and he was very new to the company, and so it kind of felt like he had something to prove. And in proving that, it was when he came in to visit me, there was no hello, there was no greeting, there was no initial, you know, let's kind of build a nice rapport with each other, let's kind of get to know each other and build a good, solid, you know, working relationship. It was more or less, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start throwing my weight around, and I'm going to start directing you to do things without kind of reasoning or understanding things. And so because obviously I pushed back on that, because I was like, right, I have a voice. I can recognize that this is not a way that I want to work. As soon as I kind of raised up to that occasion, and I was like, this is my chance to kind of tell, you know, this person how I feel. He obviously then saw that as, I guess, how should I say this? I think he was intimidated, like a threat, a challenge. He was quite intimidated by that, because he had had people stand up to him recently, from other people that I had spoken to that were witnessing the same styles of behavior from him at that time. So it kind of felt like at that point I was in a constant battle then, because he was in obviously a higher up role than myself. He knew that I had that desire to kind of step into that role. He then started kind of putting pressure on me, and kind of, I guess, challenging me a lot more to kind of try and bring me down a notch, to make himself feel a little bit more superior. And I kind of felt like as well that he was kind of sharing what was happening between our working relationship with other people. So that then was obviously kind of maybe potentially holding me back, because he was like giving other people the wrong impression of me, because it was very like, it was a new kind of like head office that had come in at the time. There was this kind of changeover of like senior kind of like managers between our stakeholders within the company. So that meant there was new BDM, new operation managers kind of coming into the fold. So, you know, it felt like I was having to kind of restart myself in a sense.
They don't know,
because they didn't know who I was, you know, and I had to kind of, show them and prove myself again. And because I kind of stood up for myself a little bit with this one individual, you know, that really kind of, I guess, took its toll on my, you know, on my mental health and in terms of my emotional kind of state at the time. So that was quite challenging.
So what would you say then happened to you when it took some of that toll? What would you say the toll was?
I think the toll was definitely in terms of like from my emotional like state. I felt like the bullying, when I was kind of trying to face up to it and have those conversations with this manager, that I wasn't able to always kind of control the conversation as much as I'd like to, or say the things that I would like to, because I always felt like he was backing me into a corner quite a bit.
Okay. And so then that could have easily led you to say, I can't deal with this anymore. Exactly. I'm going to move out.
And the pressures and everything else. Yeah. But I didn't. I kind of hung on at the time, which was quite good. I seeked advice from, you know, friends and family and whatnot to try and, I guess, figure out in terms of how I was going to navigate around this and how I was going to improve this relationship, because I kind of knew that if I didn't, it may potentially hold me back from kind of developing up into this role and working with this new team. So yeah.
Okay. So then tell me then what happened and how did you get past that situation to progress? Because obviously we know that you have progressed. So so what happened next?
So in terms of that manager at the time, it took a lot of having to have one-to-one style conversations, and also to including a lot of feedback within that, and also to a little bit of vulnerability, I would say, as well, just to try and kind of open up a little bit, particularly with getting that manager to open up to me to kind of understand me a little bit more. And I guess a lot more time and patience as well, because we hadn't had that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of this was to do with his ego and with him trying to dominate and intimidate in terms of making his impressions. So I had to kind of calm myself down a little bit and allow a little bit more time. And I think that's what really kind of helped, and was for asking for more one-to-one time so I could have that. And then that enabled us to kind of have more of a better working relationship, which was good. Things did start to improve over time. But I felt like I definitely had to work a lot harder and wait a lot more for my role, because when I was developing into it, and I was quite lucky at the time that my company was investing in its people, and they kind of built this kind of platform, which was a talent platform for internal progression, which I managed to be able to, apply for. And I actually got, approved, and I got, put through into this course, which was great. And in this course, there was another two males at the time who were also kind of developing and going through this talent, platform. And that talent platform was that progression into a business development manager. And at the time, they only had a certain amount of positions available, because we are going through this kind of expansion strategy at the moment. And it meant that depending on how many businesses were coming into the fold in terms of new acquisitions or brand swaps that we were doing within our company, meant how many business development managers roles they had available. And so I felt like, because of my emotional state at the time, and that experience being quite shared and obviously fed back up, through the ranks, that potentially held me back. Because last year, when I was kind of, in this development role, the other two guys got the position before me, and I was told that I wasn't ready for the role yet, and that I kind of had to work on my confidence a little bit and work on my emotional intelligence a little bit more, and whilst we waited for more businesses to come, I was kind of in limbo a little bit, kind of waiting for this role. But I didn't allow that to kind of get in my way. I didn't allow that to hold me back. If anything, it kind of fueled me even more. And I did go back. I listened to what that feedback was. I kind of opened myself up to it, and I kind of said, okay, that's fine. If this is the feedback that I've been given, if I've been told that I have to wait a little bit longer, if I've seen two men in the industry get ahead of me first before I was able to kind of, get that role, then I'm going to continue to work at it like I've been told, and I will prove my point that I am very much capable of this role, and I have the experience, and I have the knowledge, I have the willpower, I have the emotional intelligence, to take on this role. So that's what I did, and I kind of kept working at it. About a month ago, I got given the position, because I ended up being the best performing business development manager in the operations team, because I had been given a role. Well, that was like a cluster manager role, which was half the amount of businesses that a full BDM would get. So I was still fulfilling the role, which was great. And that's why I still kind of hung on, even though my goalposts had been moved, twice. I still kind of hung on and kind of went with that journey. And my businesses this year are now the top performing businesses in the estate.
How exciting is that, eh? Good work.
So, again, judgment, and I always work off these 3 key behaviors, because I felt like that's what really helped me get to this point, was my judgment, my drive, and my influence.
Nice. I like that. So then you've got to this position. Where do you see it going for yourself? Like, where would you like to see your career going in this industry? Like, is there an end point for you? What's the next
There's
post?
never an end point for me.
Never an end point? Well, what's the next
I
point
think
for
people
you?
who are quite ambitious never see an end point. You just kind of want to keep going at it, and it's kind of like, how can I better myself, and how can I guess get the most out of what I'm doing. So for me, I really would like to continue on at this point within my BDM role now, now that I've been appointed and a fully pledged BDM.
Yeah.
So I would like to, I guess, achieve some really amazing results within my businesses, hit some amazing targets. Also to support some of the people that I work with as well in terms of developing them, because I think that's sort of
your position now is to help.
it's to help guide people, train, coach, to make those managers be the best leaders that they can be, but also to get the best results out of their business. So, it's not only my own self journey. I think I'm also part of other people's journeys as well. So I would really like to see, the people that I work with get the most out of themselves and their businesses as well. And also too, I think, you're always on that journey of, yourself kind of progression. So in terms of internally as well. So, I want to keep on building on my emotional intelligence as well. And so that obviously I can, become a really good leader, and I'd like to develop up into either an operations manager role or even potentially a managing director role.
Wow. Always got to have a goal. It's a goalpost, and that goalpost just keeps getting higher, right?
Yeah. Or say like a SMART goal as well. But it's actually amazing, actually, now that I look back on this. I think last year, one of the best things that happened to me as well during the pandemic and in the midst of kind of like these challenges of, these new managers that I was working with, and kind of, how that made me feel at the time, I kind of, walked away from that and thought, right, what else can I do to improve myself so that in the future, if I come across similar situations, or people or men that I'm working with in the industry, how can I have better self-control of some of those situations to get a better outcome? So I kind of walked away from that and worked on myself a little bit. I invested in self-development, and I joined a 6 a.m. club. And during that 6 a.m. club at the time when I wasn't working, because within the hospitality industry during, COVID and lockdown, it was, all our businesses were closed. So I wasn't working for 6 months. So I felt like I really wanted to try and make full use of that time, to develop myself. So I did that, joined the 6 a.m. club. And during that 6 a.m. club, we did things like working on SMART goals. We practiced gratitude. We did envisioned like meditations where we would envision ourselves in terms of like where we'd want to be in our lives. And one of the SMART goals that I did at the time was a business development manager. And I had envisioned myself in the role in terms of when I meditated, like, what would that role feel like to me? What would it look like to me? Where did I see myself in terms of what businesses that I was working with and everything else? And it was actually quite a nice little self, realization a couple of weeks ago once I've been given the role, and I was kind of walking between businesses that I was kind of like, this is where I kind of envisioned myself to be.
No.
And I'm here right now, living it.
Yeah.
So I was proud. It was a proud moment.
We should be proud, definitely. So what do you have to say to ladies out there who are either, like I said, in your industry, who are wanting to progress, have that ambition and drive, and feel a little bit maybe deflated because of the fact that it's a male-dominated industry, or other women out there who are just, who are, like I said, in other industries that might be similar to you? What advice would you give to them?
I guess the best advice I would give is know your worth. 100% know your worth. Work on your confidence, work on your drive, and don't allow other men to try and overstep you. Don't allow men in the industry to try and trip you up or pin you up against the wall, because you're better than that, and that. So just stick to what that self-belief, what you believe in yourself, and what your self-worth is, and you'll learn to push past that.
Beautiful. And so then one final question for you before we get you off is, when we talk about the word liberation, and as women we know that that's quite a powerful word in to females. What do you think that means to you?
To me, I think that means in terms of how I feel within myself and in terms of like my internal world, like what it is that makes me feel good. And that I'm in control of that. Nobody else is. So yeah, you control your life. You control how you
control
feel.
your life.
You control how you liberate yourself. And just enjoy it.
Enjoy life.
Mhm.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming
You're
on here
welcome.
today, little sissy Kylie Green. It's been great to hear a bit more about your story and your journey, and I'm sure the ladies out there appreciate it as well. So really thank you for joining us today.
And thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Beautiful. And all right, ladies, we'll be back here next week with another episode of the Liberated Woman Podcast. Until then, always remember you've got this and I've got you. Bye for now.